At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert, and I watched a hooded guy on my security feed step into my build site like he owned it. He crouched by the power line, lifted a set of cutters, and clean as a surgeon snipped the cable that fed my tools and lights. By sunrise, a county letter was waiting for me, and one made-up phrase in it was about to become the HOA's favorite weapon. I'm Ethan Carter, and I didn't move into an HOA by accident. I did the opposite on purpose. I bought a small lakefront lot outside the subdivision boundary by a single foot because I wanted quiet, clean rules permits through the county and nothing else. No committees, no approved colors, no weekend clipboard patrols. Just me, a cabin build, and the kind of peace you can't put a price on. The neighborhood next door was called Pinewater Shores, run by the Pinewater Shores Homeowners Association, and it had that polished entrance sign that screams exclusive. I figured the border was the border end of story. I was wrong about one thing: people who love control don't respect lines on a map, especially when they think the map should have asked their permission first. The first time I met Deborah Whitmore, Deb, according to the badge she wore like it was a sheriff's star, she didn't introduce herself like a neighbor. She walked straight up to my truck, glanced at my permit folder on the passenger seat and said, "You can't build here. This is under our shoreline jurisdiction." I actually laughed because it was so absurd it sounded like a joke somebody tells at a bar. Shoreline jurisdiction. I repeated slow, like tasting something spoiled. Then I pulled up the county parcel map on my phone and pointed to the boundary line. "Your HOA ends right there past that birch tree. You're standing on my property." Deb didn't even look. She just tilted her head and gave me that tight smile people use when they're trying not to show anger. "We'll see what our attorneys say," she replied, like attorneys are weather inevitable and unavoidable. A week later, an official notice of violation showed up on a stake at the edge of my lot. Not from the county, not from the state. From the Pinewater Shores Homeowners Association, complete with their logo and a list of alleged issues: unapproved construction, environmental disturbance, non-compliant exterior aesthetic. The wording was designed to look governmental if you didn't know any better, and that was the point. I didn't rip it down. I photographed it, took a wide shot that included the property line marker, and saved the timestamp like my life depended on it, because in a way, my project did. It was a simple cabin build, but the materials weren't cheap. The schedule was tight, and every day of delays cost me money I'd already worked hard to set aside. Then came the late-night sabotage. The alert hit at 2:14 a.m., and I rolled out of bed so fast I nearly tripped over my boots. On the screen, the guy moved like he knew the layout. No hesitation, no searching, no wrong turn. He went straight for the cable run, cut it, and the lights on my site blinked out one by one until the camera feed went grainy and dark. I drove down there anyway, heart-hammering headlights slicing across half-built framing and stacked lumber. The cable was lying in the dirt, severed clean. My generator was still there, untouched, almost like the message was, "We're not stealing. We're stopping you." I stood in the cold staring at the cut line, and for the first time since I bought that lot, the whole thing felt bigger than a build. It felt like a system, organized, confident, and used to people backing down. By morning, the county letter arrived. It wasn't a permit issue. It wasn't a code violation. It was a temporary reclassification notice with a term I'd never seen in any ordinance, something like shared community oversight. It read like legal language, but it had that strange, slippery feel of a phrase invented in a meeting room, not a statute book. I read it twice, then a third time, and my stomach sank in a way that had nothing to do with pride. That letter wasn't about aesthetics, it was about leverage. If the HOA could point to a county document and say, "See, even the county agrees you're under us," they'd have a hook. A hook they could pull on until my project bled out. I called the county office. I got transferred. I got put on hold. I got the polite, careful voice of someone who didn't want to say anything that could be quoted back later. "Sir, it's temporary. It can be reviewed. There's a process." And every sentence sounded like, this could drag on. That afternoon I sat in my truck with the engine off, staring at my receipts in the passenger seat. Lumber foundation blocks, wiring tools, real numbers, real money. I did the math in my head, and it wasn't dramatic. It was practical. If this turned into a months-long fight, I'd either burn savings or abandon the build halfway through. And the worst part was how easy it would be for them to win by doing nothing more than slowing me down. For a few minutes I thought maybe I should cut my losses. Maybe I should sell the lot, walk away, find somewhere quiet that doesn't come with a side of power games. And then I heard Deb's voice in my head, calm, certain, smug, "We'll see what our attorneys say." That's what snapped me back. I wasn't going to let somebody's committee fantasy erase my property line. I called the sheriff's office and reported the sabotage. A deputy named Sean Miller showed up, watched the footage, and didn't waste time with theories. He leaned closer to the screen, paused the clip as the guy shifted his weight, and said, "Play that again." We watched it twice more. The hood was up, but the movement was unmistakable, an uneven gait like a leg that never healed right. Deputy Miller made a note, then asked me one question that told me he was taking it seriously. "Do you know anyone over there with a limp?" I didn't, but I knew someone who might. Across the road, my nearest neighbor was a woman named Mia Bennett, who ran a small woodworking shop out of her garage. She'd waved at me before, friendly but careful, like someone who's learned not to volunteer too much in a neighborhood full of politics. When I asked if she recognized the walk, she didn't hesitate. "Kyle Mercer," she said, "maintenance guy. Always acts like he's on assignment. And he limps bad. You can spot it from 50 feet. Deputy Miller's eyes narrowed like a door closing. "All right," he said. "That gives us something." The HOA didn't back off. If anything, they got bolder. Deb showed up again 2 days later with a man in a polo shirt and khakis holding a clipboard like it was a shield. She didn't step onto my lot this time. She hovered right at the line as if she'd learned that 1 foot mattered when it could be used against her. She called out loud enough for the road to hear. "Ethan, you've been notified. You're under shared oversight. You're required to stop all work until this is resolved." I walked out with my own folder in my hand. "That letter is getting appealed," I said, "and you don't get to require anything on my land." Deb smiled again, that same tight smile. "We're not trying to be difficult. We're protecting community standards." I looked at the half-built frame behind me, bare studs plywood, a stack of cedar boards still wrapped in plastic, and I couldn't help the sarcasm that slipped out. "Yeah," I said. "Nothing says standards like cutting someone's power line at 2 in the morning." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes did. For a split second, there was a flicker, something like annoyance that I'd said it out loud. That night I called a land use attorney. Rachel Knox didn't sound impressed by Deb's threats. She sounded bored in the way smart people get when they hear a familiar scam. "Send me the parcel map," she said. "Send me the reclassification letter. Send me the footage, and don't respond to the HOA in writing without me." Within 48 hours, Rachel did what I couldn't. She pulled records requested, communications, and forced a paper trail to exist. She filed for an emergency hearing to challenge the reclassification, and then she called me with a tone that made my skin go cold. "Ethan," she said, "this wasn't an accident." The wording in that letter didn't come from the county's templates. It came from somewhere else. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means someone fed them language," she replied. "And I'm guessing it wasn't a random citizen." Deputy Miller got his own piece of the puzzle. He spoke to Kyle Mercer. Kyle denied everything, of course, said he was home asleep, said he barely knows that lot, said he would never risk his job. But denial doesn't erase video, and it doesn't erase the fact that his gait matched the footage like a fingerprint. The twist, what really flipped the board, came from Rachel's records request. She got emails, not just 1 or 2. Threads, planning, strategy. The kind of stuff people only write when they're convinced nobody outside their circle will ever read it. There were messages about pressure points, about making the build too expensive to continue, about environmental angles and access restrictions. And in one chain there was a line that made my jaw clench so hard my teeth hurt. "Power will be handled tonight," it read. Signed by Kyle. I didn't feel triumphant when I saw it. I felt steady like a chair finally planted on solid ground. Because that one email did what Deb's titles and threats couldn't. It turned their little control game into something with consequences. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was small and plain, the kind of place that smells faintly like old paper and cheap coffee. Deb arrived with 2 attorneys and that same polished confidence, like she expected a lecture and then a win. Kyle wasn't there smart enough to keep his face out of it, maybe. Or maybe he'd been told to stay away. Rachel stood calm as a metronome and laid it out piece by piece. Parcel boundaries, county permits, the reclassification letter, and how the phrase didn't match official standards, the violation notices designed to mimic government authority, the video footage, the deputy's report. And then, like dropping a steel ball onto a glass table, she introduced the emails. You could feel the air change. Deb's attorney started objecting fast, loud scrambling for footing. But the judge, Elaine Hart, wasn't in the mood for theatrics. She asked one question that cut through everything. Ms. Whitmore, Judge Hart said, "Are you aware that your association has no jurisdiction over Mr. Carter's property line?" Deb stood, and for the first time her voice didn't land like a gavel. "We believed." No, Judge Hart interrupted. "Belief isn't jurisdiction." Rachel didn't smile. She didn't need to. She simply slid the email printouts forward and let the judge read in silence. The judge's eyes moved line to line, and with every second Deb's posture tightened like she was shrinking inside her blazer. Judge Hart looked up. "This is not community standards," she said. "This is coordinated harassment. And if the evidence supports criminal conduct, it will be referred accordingly." Deb's face went pale, then flushed, then settled into a rigid mask that couldn't hide the panic behind it. The order came down clean and final, an injunction barring the Pinewater Shores Homeowners Association and its agents from contacting me, trespassing near my lot, posting notices, or interfering with my work. The court directed the county to review the reclassification immediately, and the judge noted the sabotage evidence for potential prosecution. Deb opened her mouth like she had one more speech left in her, one more attempt to sound in charge. And nothing came out. I watched her realize in real time that all her authority depended on people being afraid of her paperwork. And the second a real court treated it like what it was, overreach and intimidation, her whole little empire folded. I walked out without saying a word to her because there was nothing left to argue. Paper power only works until it meets real proof,